Welcome to Daily Dose of Knowledge. Your brain is not fixed. It is not declining on a predetermined schedule. It is responding, every single day, to what you do with it. And most people are doing exactly the wrong things. Stay with us, and subscribe so you never miss what comes next. The brain you have today is not the brain you have to keep. Neuroscience has confirmed what was once considered impossible. The adult brain can grow new neurons, build new connections, and dramatically improve its own processing speed and capacity. The mechanism is called neuroplasticity. And it is not passive. It requires specific inputs. Most people never provide those inputs. Not because they are lazy, because nobody told them what the inputs actually are. This video is that conversation. Let's start with the most powerful and most underestimated brain habit on the list: cardiovascular exercise, not for the body. For the brain. When you engage in sustained aerobic activity, running, cycling, swimming, brisk walking, the brain releases a protein called BDNF, Brain-Derived Neurotrophic Factor. BDNF is sometimes called miracle grow for the brain. It promotes the growth of new neurons, strengthens existing neural connections, and accelerates the speed at which signals travel between brain regions. A landmark study from the University of British Columbia showed that regular aerobic exercise increases the size of the hippocampus, the brain region responsible for memory and learning, not maintains it. Increases it. The hippocampus shrinks with age and with chronic stress. Aerobic exercise reverses that process. It is the single most evidence-backed intervention for long-term cognitive health available to any human being, and it is free. Now let's talk about sleep. Because this is where most people are unknowingly destroying their own brain. Sleep is not rest. It is maintenance. During deep sleep, the brain activates a system called the glymphatic system. This system flushes toxic waste products from the brain, including amyloid beta, the protein associated with Alzheimer's disease. Every night you sleep less than 7 hours. That flushing process is incomplete. The waste accumulates. Over years and decades, the accumulation has consequences that no supplement, no nootropic, and no morning routine can reverse. Sleep is also when the brain consolidates memories. The information you encountered during the day is replayed, sorted, and transferred from short-term to long-term storage during sleep. Cutting sleep does not just make you tired. It makes you less intelligent, less emotionally regulated, less capable of learning, and over time, more vulnerable to neurological disease. The most important brain habit is the one you do with your eyes closed. Now let's talk about the third habit, and this one works at the level of brain architecture: learning a new skill. Not consuming information. Actually acquiring a skill that requires practice, failure, and repetition. When you learn a new skill, a musical instrument, a language, a sport, a craft, the brain physically restructures itself. New neural pathways form. Existing ones strengthen. The brain's white matter, the infrastructure that connects different regions, increases in density. This process is called myelination. The more a neural pathway is used, the thicker the myelin sheath surrounding it becomes. The thicker the sheath, the faster and more efficiently the signal travels. A person who plays piano is not just good at piano. They have a denser, faster, more connected brain than a person who has never learned a demanding skill. The skill is the vehicle. The neurological restructuring is the destination. Now let's talk about the fourth habit, and this one is the one most people dismiss as too simple. Reading, specifically deep reading, sustained, focused engagement with long-form text. Brain imaging studies have shown that deep reading activates more regions of the brain simultaneously than almost any other activity. Language processing, visualization, emotional simulation, critical reasoning, all firing together. Neuroscientist Marianne Wolf at UCLA has documented what she calls the reading brain, a uniquely human neural circuit that only develops through sustained engagement with complex text. That circuit, once developed, changes how the brain processes all information. Not just text, everything. The person who reads deeply thinks more precisely, imagines more vividly, and reasons more carefully than the person who does not. The reading habit is a cognitive infrastructure project, and it compounds over a lifetime. Now let's talk about the fifth habit: one that most people associate with relaxation but is actually a high-intensity neurological workout, meditation. Specifically focused attention meditation. A landmark study from Harvard Medical School showed that 8 weeks of mindfulness meditation produced measurable increases in cortical thickness in regions associated with attention, interoception, and sensory processing. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function, decision-making, and impulse control, literally thickened in participants who meditated regularly, and the amygdala, the brain's alarm center, shrank. Not metaphorically. The tissue volume decreased. Meditation is not relaxation. It is a training regime for the prefrontal cortex. You are repeatedly redirecting attention, which is exactly the same mechanism as lifting a weight and putting it down. The muscle getting stronger is the one that controls focus, emotional regulation, and conscious decision-making. Now let's talk about the 6th habit, and this one surprises most people. Cold exposure. Brief deliberate exposure to cold water, cold showers, cold plunges. Cold exposure triggers a dramatic increase in norepinephrine, a neurotransmitter and hormone that plays a central role in attention, focus, and mood regulation. Research from the Thrombosis Research Institute showed that regular cold exposure increases metabolic rate and produces sustained increases in norepinephrine levels lasting hours after the exposure ends. Norepinephrine at elevated levels sharpens attention, reduces brain fog, and increases the speed of cognitive processing. It is one of the primary targets of ADHD medication, and cold water produces it naturally and immediately. A 2-minute cold shower produces a neurochemical state that most people spend money trying to replicate through caffeine and supplements. Now let's talk about the 7th habit, and it is one of the most social, deep conversation, not small talk. Not social media interaction. Sustained intellectually demanding conversation with people who challenge your thinking. When you engage in genuine intellectual discourse, defending a position, considering a counter-argument, updating your view in real time, the prefrontal cortex, the anterior cingulate cortex, and the language processing centers are all active simultaneously. This is one of the highest demand cognitive activities a human being can engage in. It requires working memory, perspective taking, real-time reasoning, and emotional regulation all at once. The brain that is regularly challenged in conversation is a sharper, more flexible, more creative brain than one that is not. Choose who you talk to carefully. The conversations you have are shaping your brain. Now let's talk about the 8th habit, nutrition. Specifically the nutrients the brain requires to function at its highest level. The brain is 60% fat. It runs on glucose. And it is extraordinarily sensitive to nutritional deficiencies. Omega-3 fatty acids found in fatty fish, walnuts, and flaxseed are the primary structural component of neuronal membranes. Deficiency in omega-3 is linked to reduced cognitive function, increased depression risk, and accelerated cognitive decline. Magnesium plays a critical role in synaptic plasticity, the brain's ability to strengthen connections between neurons. Most people in the modern world are chronically deficient. Blueberries contain flavonoids that cross the blood-brain barrier and reduce neuroinflammation, chronic low-grade inflammation of brain tissue that is now recognized as a major contributor to cognitive decline. You are not just feeding your body. Every meal is a neurological decision. Now let's talk about the 9th habit, and this one requires the least effort but produces effects most people never access. Spaced repetition for deliberate memory training. Most people encounter information and move on. The brain files it loosely, and within days the majority is gone. Not because the brain is bad at storage, because it was never given a signal that the information mattered. Spaced repetition sends that signal. By reviewing information at increasing intervals, 1 day, 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, you force the brain to retrieve the information repeatedly. Each retrieval strengthens the memory trace. The neural pathway becomes more durable. The information moves from fragile short-term encoding to robust long-term storage. This is not studying harder. It is studying in alignment with how memory actually consolidates. And the difference in retention is not marginal, it is transformational. Now let's bring it all together. Because the habits in this video are not independent. They interact. They compound. Exercise increases BDNF, which accelerates learning. Sleep consolidates what exercise and learning produced. Meditation strengthens the attention system that makes deep reading and skill acquisition possible. Cold exposure produces the neurochemical state that makes focus available. Nutrition provides the raw materials for everything else. This is not a list of 10 things to try. It is a system. And like every system, the parts work better together than any of them work alone. The brain you have today is not the brain you have to keep. But it will only change if you give it a reason to. If that gave you something real, subscribe to Daily Dose of Knowledge. Drop a comment with which habit you are starting first. And explore our videos on psychology, self-help, human behavior, science, and society. There is always something here that will shift the way you think.